What's up, dog?
Well, what's up, dog? Very lovely to be here, dog.
I was going to say, it's so funny saying what's up, dog to you, because that doesn't feel like our interaction typically.
And it symbolically does not fit into my vocal patterns too well. I go too low on the dog.
Dog. What's up, dog?
I've been integrating pal into things. Like now whenever I'm on an app with someone, I'll be like, I'm getting drinks with some pals right now. Because I used to say merry band of lesbians for whatever group I was in, but now I say pal.
I like both of those. Pal is a good word. Buddy is similar, but I'm trying to find non-masculine, because some of like fellas is like
I concur,
fun, but it's
I think fellas has become now so neutral, just in that it's more about the folksiness of it all. Because when you call someone fellas, you're saying more about yourself than the people you're talking to. I think. Just my take.
Interesting take, folks. This fellas. For all the fellas.
Hi, fellas.
And it still feels masculine.
Yeah, maybe.
Folks, this is Michael Abber, extremely funny comedian. We're testing a thing where, because Michael speaks as the decibel he does.
Yes.
He's saying that he keeps the microphone far.
It is further away for your safety.
So hopefully, I think it should be audible. It'll be funny. I think you're further, but I think it'll still be louder than me.
Probably. No, my voice carries a certain way after years of speech therapy that made my vowel sounds too wide. I also think I just saw like the movie The Philadelphia Story with Katharine Hepburn at a young age. I was like, that's how people talk.
That's a great lead-in. Okay, so Mike is one of my favorite comedians in the scene.
Thank you.
A star.
Knows what to say to a fella.
And has a definite like connection with theater and theater ideas, or like, that sort of thing. And you've brought some of we've been at like parties, and we'll just like be in a corner and you'll be telling me about like some theater idea and how it connects to comedy, and I love it. And
you and I do go off in little corners, and we can't put the work away. We're workaholics at the party.
I did a hand spit take. You made me laugh so hard that I spilled on myself. But so I'm curious to think, just broad open-ended question to get us cooking. What are your thoughts on theater and comedy in the intersection?
That's a great question also, because I saw a play recently that was a comedy that I absolutely hated. And I just thought it was such buffalo shit on a nickel, so not funny, so horrible. It's called Shucks, don't see it.
Oh, sure.
But my general theory about all of it is that, because I studied playwriting primarily, and sort of the notion of that live performance is meant to be done live. And there's an intimacy with the audience that you can't really, we move it away now when we tape things or when you have reels, but in the moment, that's the whole work. It's, the air that gets the joke to the audience and the laugh back to the comic. And I think also, so that's the live principles right there that I think you can't erase from stand-up comedy. And also, in studying playwriting, I learned so much about, how to almost chart an idea and pull it through in a multi-act structure. And I think I apply that to jokes. Like, I do very few boom-ch jokes. Or if I do, they're by mistake. They're things that I just said and they worked out to fit that. Because when I outline things, I always try to have almost the narration of, there's a want, there's an obstacle, and it ends on either it works or it doesn't. And that, I think, creates a movement in a joke that I find very engaging to do. It's not even necessarily what I want to see, but I need to perform it in a way that I find engaging to do. When, I love watching anyone's comedy. Well, no, I don't love watching anyone's comedy. But, it's one way in.
Any different sort of voice is what you mean by that.
Exactly. I think it's, the kind of thing of whatever way it makes sense to someone is the way that person should do it. And for me, it involves kind of the 3-act structure of almost farcical comedies of it opens on someone wanting something and then it's tested and it ends on them getting it or not getting it. And that then is a way of us, concluding that portion.
That's so fascinating.
So all of my jokes function in that little bubble. And if I can, I try to time it out to 1 minute per part. So that way I know it's 3 minutes and I can swap them around in a set.
Wait, okay. I'm sorry, say that last bit again, the 3 minutes. Each minute is like an act?
It's like an act almost. Like, okay. I try to open up a lot of jokes with a want or a problem. Kind of a visitation on that where that's tested and then it ends on either it worked or it didn't. Like, there's a great Stephen Sondheim quote, the great Broadway composer Stephen Sondheim, where he talks about how in songs, in a musical, it needs to end in a different place than it began. It needs to have a middle that involves the transition from that beginning into a different ending. And that's how you have a movement with it, and that's how it has a significance. And I think jokes work that way, too. It's more fun when it moves in a direction. I like to feel we ended in a different place than where we started. And I think that's the primary theatrical element of it all, at least dramaturgically speaking, the Aristotelian ideals.
It's funny, I mean, because my jokes they don't have a movement as necessarily maybe an individual
but they
piece.
do.
But I mean, okay, that's interesting. I'll get back to the individual, but I've been trying to do in a longer set, trying to have some sort of act idea.
Yeah.
And trying to be like, all right, well, maybe the theme will switch over time. But what did you mean by the individuals do? The individuals do have a movement in them?
They do. I think that you do really sharp one-liners where the end is a progression. Yeah, smile at the camera. The end is a progression on where we started. It's not, just a riff on it. It's not a commentary on it. It's a trajectory with it. And I think that movement does so much for a set. It makes things so much more exciting.
Okay.
Because, again, now we're really getting... People are going to turn off this episode as I say this. There's a great scholar named Jill Dolan who once wrote a great essay on the notion of utopianism in theater. Meaning that when someone's on stage, the way how we create the stage world is by the description of the person on there, what they're saying we buy into. We're seeing through their lens. So we're being brought in completely, and the universe as we see it is reshifted to that center. So I take that pretty seriously with stand-up, and I think most people do it naturally with no problem at all. But, we are, whatever the person's talking about is the thing that matters in that instance. It's what the whole universe is centered on. And I think that is I try to remember that you can define things in that manner, and you pull out the significance, and people see as much as you're giving them.
That is cool. I've been thinking about, I guess not about the universe shifting on it, but the kind of like the power dynamics of, because you're the one on stage talking, and you decide what everybody in the room thinks about in that moment.
Exactly. You kind of, and you need to kind of find a way to welcome in that they can have opinions on things, but that you're on your own path with it.
Right.
That it's a topic.
They're following you, but they're not like being dragged or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's so much more interesting than when I see someone get out. I think I see people sometimes perform to the idea of the audience. And they perform the idea of the joke. But it's not actually the meat and potatoes of that. We're having this interaction right now. And, incidents will happen, opinions will change, and unexpected, that's where the meat of it is, I think.
I love that. The idea of the audience, like sort of in inflexibility, or they're not adjusting to the moment. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's kind of, I think it comes from at least when I know I've done it, and I'm very upset with myself, it's because of self-awareness. I'm just too self-aware in the moment. Whereas I feel kind of like, you can't worry about the opinion I think for me it's fuckability. The minute I threw out the notion of that anyone will maybe want to have sex with me after my set, I got a lot better. Because before that, then I was very limited in what I would talk about.
No, I think that's fair. I think that applies to dancing as well.
Absolutely.
It's funny because it's like sometimes I love dancing, and I think like a key element of like really enjoying yourself and not having people, I think, like be put off by it is like don't try to be dancing sexy.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And
you're trying to look fuckable. Sorry.
It's kind of like I hate whenever I see someone trying to curate an image of anything ever. Not anything ever. That's so extreme. I've had my morning coffee.
I take it. Well, I mean, actually, then again, though, when somebody who is sexy is dancing to be sexy, it's
lovely.
I think part of it's that maybe like just our act and our brand doesn't necessarily lead to an attempt at fuckability in these spaces.
Well, nothing engages me more than when comic friends of mine get laid after a show. That's such a different universe to me. I really can't say enough. If I meet an audience member, we make a plan to get coffee and talk about a book we've both read. It's not anything else. And it's so dazzling to me. Or I was backstage at a show recently, and two comics were flirting, and I was like, we're in the workplace right now, everybody.
Actually, it's funny. People say it's the workplace. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But it's like, what other workplace do you have where you pay money to go do 3 minutes of like.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's not a. I don't know. It's like not a. It's still it's a hobby.
I like that the hobby element of it all. I think
it becomes a job at some point.
Yeah, but I also think it's important embracing the fact that it's a hobby because that means it's there to make you happier in a way or have more. Because I feel like, you know, if you wanted to talk about comedy in a way that makes you kill yourself, you absolutely can. But until you're being paid to do it at a really high level, what's the point of that when it is just a hobby that is just meant to keep you engaged in your day-to-day life and provide a structure?
Oh, yeah. I was talking to somebody at a party, and they were like they were talking about how miserable of a time they were having, like, doing stand-up comedy, and they, like, really hated it, and, like, they hated, like, I was like, then don't do it.
Don't
what
do
are you
it.
talking about?
It's also like
it's supposed to be a blast. It's supposed to be a fun, you know.
And well, I always think that people who feel that way, they must think their work is so essential.
Yeah.
I always think if
like,
you hate this and you still do it,
like,
do you think I need your work to move on with my day? It amazes me.
I guess I could see that. I guess I'm trying to give them some benefit of the doubt. Maybe they view it. Maybe their true passion is some other side of the form, like writing or something.
Yeah.
And they view stand-up as a necessary means to an end or something.
But when it's done, you know, it can just be the most fun thing ever.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you know, shit that gets involved, but it can just be fun. And I'm interested. I'm interested in how many people don't want it to just be fun, or don't want it to just be something that they can structure their day with. Sometimes, like, at my worst, it just structures my day, and I don't need much more from it in that instance.
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about possibly recording yesterday, and you're like, I have to run some new material.
I had to run and then I also canceled. I said I couldn't do later that night because I was going to see a romantic liaison of mine who canceled on me, and I went, well, then I'm gonna go practice 3 more minutes, and I went to another mic.
Good new minutes, new stuff?
They're okay. I'm trying to work out a joke right now. It's having trouble making sense precisely. We're basically, so the
doctor is in.
Yeah. So the joke opens right now on that, I was very aware of sex as a young kid because my family all sat together and watched Sex and the City. And that since I was 5, we'd all sit down and watch Sex and the City as a family. And things that I explained as it went along. And then, so the deviation on the joke, here's the deviation point that I actually really like. It goes, my sisters were shown Spanish language TV as kids, so they're fluent in Spanish. But I was shown Sex and the City, so I'm fluent in men. And then there's a little other part about the Spanish I do know. And then I want to go in from there that I was very aware of sex. So at like 8 years old, I asked my mom about artificial insemination. And the wording she used was really precise. And she said a woman can rub semen on herself. But I pictured it as like putting on lotion.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I'm trying to have a punchline where it's like, so I thought that if you're coming on your girlfriend's face, you better be prepared for 18 years of responsibility. You see, it doesn't quite land yet.
Yeah, it doesn't land.
No, it needs a logic link that isn't quite there, or it's just a detail that isn't even worth the joke.
I mean, I guess it's kind of a dirty angle. I mean, that's already, but I guess like hearing more about the lotion idea.
Yeah. Well, that's very sound to the limbs. It puts the lotion on its skin.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. I was, my mind went to like being at the beach and somebody asking you to help them. Or
well, that was another idea for maybe to go in a direction with the joke. So that was one thing I'm trying to work out just to do as some bit on young lens on sexuality and why Sex and the City wasn't a great thing for me as a child at that time. So that's one idea I'm working on. I'm also working on a new bit about how kind of being in a relationship with someone where when we're together, when we're not. Like that is just monogamy without object permanence. And I'm working out what that looks like. I feel like I need to throw things at the wall sometimes and let them not make sense or let them, have ideas that intrigue me because it's enough to do it. And then I kind of pick and choose from there what's working.
I do feel like some of the jokes that I've written that I like more have started as bad jokes.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I kind of think if something works too fast at a mic, it's probably too simple. I mean, to make it work at a show where you can draw it out and have an impact on the room, there needs to be so much meat on the bone. There needs to be so much... like, I was doing a joke for a while that was just playing to no laughs at all. And it took like 2 months, but I got it working, and now it's in every single one of my sets at shows.
Oh, yeah.
It's my joke about getting not being hired at the 9/11 museum. And
I've heard you do a version of that.
Yeah, and it took a lot of, how do I approach the idea of it? How do I find a way to have an action in it.
Did I see it not work?
Probably.
Because I think I saw it not work, and I think I talked to you about it. It's like, I do like that bit.
It's a good...
I don't know.
Well, it took time for me to learn. So that's another one where it had to have kind of 3 parts. It has this opening part of, after an arduous application period.
We see the towers.
Here it is. Yes, exactly.
Sorry.
And a plane flies in. No, but it kind of opens with
this... Stage left.
This Act 1 idea. This Act 1 idea kind of like, okay, I wasn't hired at the 9/11 Museum. Second greatest loss to ever happen at Ground Zero. There's an anger there. Then the next portion of it is where I talk about how I spoke to the head of HR who said that they thought I was too theatrical to work at the 9/11 Museum. That's kind of an in-between portion. And then it ends on me talking about how I'm going to get revenge on them by bombing the 9/11 Museum.
Oh my goodness.
But I actually wouldn't because it's been done before.
This video has just been demonetized.
Exactly. But actually now I'm cutting out the last part of a joke because the first 2 parts just work so well and I can pivot it into a new bit that I like a lot. But I like the ending part where I threatened to bomb the 9/11 Museum.
This video is going to have that Wikipedia disclaimer. If you even say the words, it shows up. There's like a YouTube automatic thing that's like learn more about the terrorist attacks.
I'm glad they're going to learn it from me, someone who did the studying on it.
Okay, but jump kind of just like taking that and looking at how you were describing that just now. You're like, this first part is where I build like anger.
Yes.
And it's like, are you looking at the movement and the acts as like, what emotion is this instilling, or like what's?
It's kind of like how am I moving through that emotion almost. That joke begins with me being very, very angry and ends on me having a plan for what I'm going to do about it and being very happy with myself. That's a movement. That's a fun thing to watch happen, and that's a fun thing to do and talk about.
We see a want without resolution.
Exactly.
And we see you kind of like look at the options and then pick one.
Well,
kind of, I don't know about
the want is so essential. Like there's there's the old thing about how in Pygmalion, the George Bernard Shaw play, that's so formative to it became My Fair Lady as a musical, which is slightly more famous.
Okay.
Or very much more famous. But it opens midway through the first act. One of the characters just states what she wants so precisely. And then we have the rest of the play to go, but is she going to get it? And that forms a story, and then we learn about her through the obstacles in her way and how she's getting closer and then what's happening in the aftermath. And I think that makes something very engaging and very entertaining. And what's nice about that is also it stops you from ever being preachy or ever sharing opinions as if you think that your opinion is worth a lot. I think I'm interested in those things when they're incidental. I like to learn things, in the incidental or offshoot kind of ways and not just have someone tell me.
Right. You don't feel like you're going on stage and saying an essential idea.
Exactly.
But if somebody hears something you say and goes, "Oh, that's essential to me now," that's fine.
But I never want people to think that I think this is essential.
Right.
I mean, I just think this is an entertaining thing that I more or less had in my... I mean, how do you start processing your jokes? Like, do you feel like you start getting them like in a little ball form almost?
Bouncing it. Well, I've been looking at them through a new lens that I really enjoy, and I think you might like this too. I've been thinking of them as toys.
I say haunted objects.
That's so funny.
I say haunted. Like, have you ever seen the Conjuring movies?
I don't think I have, but I get the...
They're demon hunters, and they collect all of their haunted items that held a demon in it, and they keep it in one room. And I feel like jokes for me become haunted objects I pull off a wall, and then put them back, and then you move through.
And I guess that's like... That's so, like, how is the audience engaging with the haunted object? Like, they get to be spooked by it? Or it's like a...
I think it's more... Well, at least for me, it's nice because I don't feel like... I feel like the joke is something external I'm pulling in. It doesn't need to be definitive of who I am. It can just be the thing that's here. I think that there's a danger sometimes of people getting too connected to their jokes and thinking that their jokes are them. And kind of the notion of, if this does poorly, I'm bad, or what does this say about me? When really, it is just such an outside thing that has happened.
Right.
And you're just presenting this thing that has happened, and then you can put it away and go on with your life and your day. I think that's how it engages with it. It doesn't feel, it feels like it's a part of me, but not me itself.
It's funny you say that, but I feel like some people, they are intertwined with a certain element where it's like you can see that the demon inside the object has kind of caught their arm a bit.
Exactly.
And you're like, they're presenting something that is like, they're like maybe racist or presenting something that's too essential or something in some capacity, or like trying to look smart and or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's some element you're like, oh, that's latched onto them.
But those details are where it gets so interesting to me. I love whenever I see that kind of thing of someone hasn't fully put something away or that there's still residue of it on them. Like one of my favorite, it's not even a comedy special, but one of my favorite specials of all time, it is a stand-up comedy special, is Carrie Fisher, Wishful Drinking. Have you ever seen... So Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia in Star Wars.
She was a comedian?
Kinda. So she was... This is a really weird story.
Wishful Drinking.
Yeah, great title. So she wrote a lot of books. She was a writer. And this is really weird. I had read all of her books, and I was a fan of hers as a kid, but never saw Star Wars until after she died.
Oh, shit.
So I was like a mega fan of her.
Except for...
but I'd never seen Star Wars.
That's so funny.
Which, to this day, is not that amazing to me. I don't care for the Star Wars franchise, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's too silly for me. Anyway. But in her... So she has a special where she kind of talks about her life, and it's so funny. It's just so one-liner heavy. But you see where things are less funny to her. And you see in how she's delivering them, this is not as funny to her as it is to us right now. And you see it kind of get stuck on her in a way that's so entertaining.
Do you have any of those in the act that are like lines that work that you're like, I don't really feel this as much as the crowd does?
Well,
is that not quite what you're getting at?
It's interesting. I think I have stories that I'm happy to talk about them because they're so interesting. I mean, I eventually find a relationship to it where I do feel comfortable with saying it, but there are certain things where in the beginning I feel like I don't like how funny this is right now. Like I have a 10-minute bit that I do sometimes that's about when I went to Michigan to lose my virginity, but I wound up going to the hospital, and there were just details in that story that are true that were so upsetting because they're true, like that in my brain I thought these things and wanted to, like, made such a stupid scheme to try to have sex with someone I'd never met before, who was friends with my friend who went to Michigan. And when those details get the laugh, it is kind of like, well, that's not meant to be it, but okay.
I know what you mean.
And that feeling of, like, just that this very true thing that you thought so earnestly is now alone so funny. It's not embarrassing so much as it is that you're, I still feel the optimism of my 19-year-old self.
You still have the residue.
Having this plan.
Yeah.
I still think it wasn't the worst idea ever.
I guess the stuff that people laugh at more than I want them to is usually like dirty stuff. Or you know what I mean?
Well, talking about sex is always a weird one because, it's like, how do you make sure you talk about sex in the way that's okay with your relationship to it? And that you're comfortable with it. And trying to make sure the audience is laughing at the right thing.
Yeah.
Because I do know that feeling of watching a comic talk about sex in a way where it feels like they are just calling themselves like a child. That can make me sad as an audience member laughing at it. That can make me sad, and I feel someone's putting themselves down in that realm.
I put my like by accident or like because I try
by
to
accident.
I was gonna say,
well, because if it's done on purpose and alone, again, utopianism, Jill Dolan's theory, the nature of being up on stage is cueing the audience that you've moved through it more or less.
Okay.
And so that alone has a triumph element. So in a refined joke like that, it works. But like when we're at a mic and you're watching someone just try to get a laugh out of the room at any cost and they're saying anything, I feel quietly horrified for them. Or I feel horrified for, like, I never have to say in a set I'm gay. The audience gets it fine. But when I first started and I would make jokes about that, I was like, that was so stupid. And just, I feel upset for myself about that.
I feel that. I mean, there's certain Tourette's jokes where it's like, they get such a laugh that I'm like, I get mad. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's not that good of a joke. It's just I have Tourette's.
No, and it's just a fact with a little twist on it. Again, there's not really a movement per se. There's not an opinion attached. There's not the meat. But then every now and then I think, is that what the audience wants? Like, again, I was at this play I saw the other day that I hated, this musical, and the audience was going bananas for it. And I wanted to tell them to shut the fuck up because they were telling people that were bad that they were good. And, then it gets back to, what does the audience really want in the end? And they just want to be engaged, roughly, and to laugh. And all this other work that we're putting in is just for us. And that has to be okay, and that has to be fun, and that has to be worth our time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, are you trying to build something that's pleasing to an audience solely, or something that you really enjoy, but maybe pleases them a little less than.
Exactly. And I don't know. I don't like, as an audience member, feeling overly tended to. I like the hair of, kind of, with the distance is acknowledged.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen Beau is Afraid yet?
No.
I saw it with Durso the other day. We loved it.
Sure.
But something so fun about it is how little Ari Aster cares about the audience sometimes. He just lets you feel unsettled, confused, what have you, but he's getting you to where you need to go. I think overly tending to the audience, it can feel too preachy sometimes.
Right.
The relationship requires trust in both directions.
I feel like they assume you're. I was just imagining like how Disney movies, like especially these days, like they'll be like, it's the year 2065 and I'm a wizard.
Totally.
It's like, all right, fucking yeah. But it's like it is for children, but like even kids movies formerly tried to do things visually or smart.
Yeah, and have the details work only in a way that made sense for how that story needed to be told with the tone it needed to be told.
Right.
I think that's more interesting than tending to the audience or trying to make sure the audience has an opinion about you. I think that's a huge waste of time. Because they will. Because we're all a little judgmental and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can't curate those things.
Yeah, trying to make sure it's a specific image or something is, yeah.
Exactly.
A specific opinion.
I feel like, there's a lot of like nice guy comedy.
Interesting. What do you mean by that? I mean, I get the gist, but I just want you to make fun of it because I have a little vitriol in my heart for it.
Well, I have two versions of it. There's nice guy comedy, and then with a lot of queer comics, there's like the, aren't I just the worst? Like, I'm terrible. And they're both things in which you're trying to appeal to the audience in a way where, like with nice guy comedy, it's just someone trying to convince us that they're essentially good in a way that feels so, it feels like a con job. It doesn't feel like the story. It doesn't feel like the joke. It feels like I'm stuck in your living room after a dinner party and you're not letting me leave because you want me to make sure I have a good feeling about you that I can then share with other people. It's so just, I feel kind of allergic to it. It's like an overly sentimental movie also.
I just was remembering a really funny thing within that space. There's a guy, I'm not going to give names. There's a guy at a mic who I actually don't know who this was, so I feel comfortable. But this guy was talking about how he was like in the top 1% of Phoebe Bridgers listeners is when Spotify Wrapped came out. And a friend of mine at the mic basically like yelled out, "Damn, get this guy some pussy."
Yeah, which again goes back to straight male comics can get pussy after a show, and that has obstructed comedy. No.
Well, I guess the point being the person on stage trying to say the thing to be like, I'm the nice guy.
Exactly,
what I mean?
And trying to curate this image, and when you do that, you forfeit the joke. Because the joke is typically a less is more thing, where it needs to be able to have. Things need to be able to leak out of it, if you know what I mean. I do think leaking out is kind of the operative idea. It needs to be things have to fall out of it.
It's like, because I'm still imagining it as like a haunted object, so the thing leaking out is some sort of demon.
It is!
And it's like
wait, so
like
how is it a
gas,
toy
like,
for you? What's the toy version of that?
So the idea being like comedians are toy manufacturers and everybody's making different types of toys. And the audience gets to play with the little joke ideas. And it's like some people are making like Silly Putty, some people are making G.I. Joes or Barbies, or I'm making like rubber bugs and plastic dinosaurs. You know what I mean? You're making
probably calico critters with doll houses.
What's a calico critter?
They're these little. They sell them at Barnes and Noble. There are these little animal dolls that you put in doll houses.
You're fully making a dollhouse diorama, and putting the critters in
little situations.
Yeah, you're building a narrative with the yeah.
Well, something I always think about writing a joke also is so when I studied playwriting, I had a professor who'd always she'd call it paletting out the play, where you kind of list out, before you begin, you list out all the characters, you list out all the settings, all the events, all of the tones, all the things that you want to happen, and from there you kind of pick and choose. I think, at least for me, with how I write jokes, because a lot of them are true, or based on true stories, that I then kind of adapt into a joke form, and sometimes the story element falls out and just becomes about a detail of it. But, I literally list out who is involved in this joke. Who are the other people present? Because the audience needs to know they're there. Where are we? Why are we in these places? And then what happens? What are the literal events? And then the joke can't get in the way of those things. It needs to be able to move with it. And then that kind of builds the structure for me.
You have it sort of storyboarded.
Yes. Well, it's kind of like, I also always think, if I can make I love nouns. I hate adjectives. I love nouns. And if I can make the true noun the funniest part of the joke, then it's very good.
What do you mean by that?
So it's kind of like, if the true thing, if the actual detail that happened is the punchline, is the funniest part, I feel like I have done a very good job adapting the story or the joke. Like, I do a joke about how my uncle died at his daughter's wedding, at my cousin's wedding.
Right.
And
Great
I
joke.
tape recorded it.
Yeah.
And I realized in structuring the joke, the fact that I have the camera needs to get the laugh, because that is in and of itself funny.
Right.
And if I do a joke about having the camera, then it's not quite the same. The setup needs to lead in to the punchline being, I have a camera. Does that make sense?
Right. All right.
So the noun, the thing I already know, is the punchline, and work backwards to create the setup for that detail.
As opposed to like an opinion on the situation.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, for sure.
Kind of trying to keep the actual objects, the things are in and of themselves the funniest, because they're going to carry the connotations. Like in that story, it's an orange flip video camera. That's so stupid. That's
really
so funny.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And there's no need to try to have a commentary on that. I just need to introduce it in the right way and let that do its own work.
Do you still do a commentary on it, but it's like that being the funny thing itself, or do you go somewhere else with it?
I do still do a commentary on it. So it happens in the sequence of the story where I talk about how my cousin, because it was an Orthodox Jewish wedding and she was separate because men and women are in separate rooms. So she didn't get to see it. So thank God I recorded it. That's kind of how I introduced the idea. But then this one I'm actually going to cut. I don't think it's going to make sense to you. Let me know. Let me know if this means anything to you.
Sure.
I have a line where I go, do we remember flip video cameras? You gave them to an artsy kid in 4th grade, and 3 years later you got that same kid the book Fun Home.
Doesn't make any.
Yeah.
No.
You see that? That's
No.
one for a specific audience.
But it's funny because I can see that and go, that's for the people that happened to.
Exactly,
You know what
because
I mean?
the book Fun Home is a graphic novel about a young lesbian discovering her sexuality. And that was a book my parents got me because someone recommended it and they had no clue what it was.
What if you said that?
I don't know. I don't like spelling things out sometimes.
Oh, sure.
Because
sure. Yeah, totally.
Also, in a really...
Then it kills it for that sub-audience.
Exactly.
And it makes it like sort of this weird outside view, like a terrarium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love when a joke makes sense isn't essential to understanding the full... When there's a line that's not essential to the full the full understanding, that's going to hit some people and not others.
Yeah.
And you get that really fun moment where someone leans over to the person they're with and explains it. That's fun.
I did my steampunk, one of my steampunk jokes at the taping, and somebody in the crowd went, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man. So it's like just like after the joke, somebody goes like loudly.
Well,
So,
someone who I have a lot of friends who I specifically have a lot of friends who love WrestleMania and talk about WrestleMania in their comedy, and I never understand that, but I know the fun of watching them get it, and I know I have fun when it happens, and I laugh at the effect happening in the room, and then I'm back in on the joke.
There's some level of information.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
No, but that's another way where, you kind of create something in the room with that sense of some people get it, others may not, but that's not the whole point. The whole point is the story, is the thing that we're all aware of, is the joke. These small details that you pepper in are how you create that friction with the room that's going to then lead to a better result performance-wise.
I just don't do story. Like, you know what I mean? I'd like to, but you're saying this and I'm like, totally. I'm like totally on board with it, and I'm just like, man, I'd love to try to do more story, but I just like, it doesn't, you know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it's an essential thing. I mean, like I said, I think all we want to see is someone's most logical output of who they are and or what they're best at, what they're most interested in, and just doing that without any kind of intense curation.
Well, I guess the thing is I am interested in story, and
yes.
but it's like the thing is, and I think it's. Like, if I only ever worked on one-liners, I'd be like one way, but it's like, I think it's been helpful. And because I've been saying I want to try a story, and I have many times, like, written them out. But what ends up happening is then I learn more about one-liners, or I take metaphors back, or, like, I condense them down. And so it's like, I think it's always helpful to try.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I think it's also kind of like, the content dictates the form. What the idea has a best way for it to be done. There's a best practice for how that idea is going to shine the best. And sometimes it's a story, and sometimes it's not. And it just seems to exist in the form that makes the most sense, which is why, like, whenever I hear someone say, I'm going to stay home tonight and try to write something new, I know that person's not going to get shit done. Because you need to have the idea kind of rolling around and then kind of wait for it to have that right home for it, if that makes sense.
True.
Like, I feel like I never have organized writing time. I just have to have time in the day around for when it's going to click and when it's going to make sense.
I guess I'm going to disagree on that one, because I specifically do better when if I'm that person who's like, I'm gonna go sit down and write. That's when I do my best stuff. And I think it's another thing where it's like, people should write in the best manner that they are able. And I think, like, because you know what I mean? I guess, I don't know. Yeah, I can see that being different.
Well, something I also try to do is, if I really know what I want to write, I try to force myself to not write that for a few days and work on other things.
Oh, interesting. Let it cook?
Yeah. And also get really excited to put it down.
Oh, interesting.
Because, you know, the process of writing it out is so much fun. Like, when you first get it on the page, and when you first get all the working pieces in their place, that I want to have time, so that first time I get it down, there's already a lot there, and it feels very fun.
That's fascinating.
And that's the beginning of a good relationship with it. Versus, I have jokes that I do that do really well, and that I think are good, but I actually get very frustrated with them because I know the process of writing them.
Well, actually, I'm jumping back and disagreeing with myself and agreeing with myself, but re-agreeing with you. The idea you're saying about having things roll in the back of your mind, when I'm sitting down to write, it's often not necessarily that I'm writing a full thing in that moment.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm getting a series of balls, like you were saying before, ready to roll.
Yes.
And then I'll spend a week, they'll roll in my head. The next time I sit down to do organized writing, that's when a lot of those balls will be ready to come out.
Yeah.
And then I'll get some more ready to go. So it's like I'll sit down and be like, oh man, I'm obsessed with hummingbirds. And then I'll spend a week thinking, like, that'll roll, and then I'll sit down and it'll all come out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And also, beginning with the notion of what the noun is: hummingbirds, butterflies,
right?
You know, video cameras, all of these things. Beginning with that and panning out from there, there's more of a truth to it, because it is just the natural thing that caught our eyes and our imaginations, as opposed to trying to write a joke that makes you look like a nice guy.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is, I do try to write jokes that make me look like a dumbass. You know what I mean? It's like, so I am like, there's still the adjective, but it's just in a different direction. You know?
That is true, but, like, you know, it's fun to really sit with it and then let it kind of flow out. Like, well, there's a playwright who I always loved, where he's dead now, and he used to always brag about how quickly he wrote his plays, but he was lying, because he would ruminate on them for years and then just write them down kind of in like a month-long sitting. And he'd be like, it only took a month, when it was like, no, it was a multi-year long process of stirring with these characters and that idea, and then, you know, making the actual sit-down part just fun.
Right, yeah. That's smart.
Well, because also, in the time in my life where I was forcing myself to write a certain number of pages every day, which I still do. I do morning pages every day, where I try to make sure I get at least 1,000 words or several pages. Really? But those are just nothing, more or less. Or what I do in those that's really weird is I'll talk in my diary about the joke I think I'm trying to write at that moment. It's really a perverse back and forth.
Right.
But when I was trying to write,
dialogue between the journal and the diary.
Exactly. Well, I get really mad at my diary for whatever reason. I act like it's its own person with its own. I literally write mean things to it inside of
nosy
it.
Bitch.
Or also, so I have a diary app that I use, and what I hate about it, and I've had to disable this feature, is it emails you sometimes and goes, 3 years ago today, you wrote this. And back then, like an idiot, I titled my entries. And it's so humiliating to see what you wrote at 21 on that day. It's really terrible. But yeah, it's so I try to write that every single day, but trying to write 10 good pages every day of like a play or something, that was just never the process that worked best for me. What worked best for me is letting it organically come together and then put it out when it was ready.
True. That's interesting.
And because, you know, also, it's not meant to live on a page for that long. Jokes, I mean. They're not meant to have that long of a life written down on a page. They're meant to eventually just become in our bodies. So you need to kind of spend more time there altogether.
It's like food.
It
That's
is like
interesting.
food.
It's like you're writing down the recipe, and then it's like, no, that's meant to be dinner later.
Are most episodes like this where we really think these things through, or do most people deviate and not talk about their craft?
No, I mean it's honestly, it's been deviations, but I'm more interested in craft, and I also like know that you have a lot to say about the craft, and specifically from a theater angle.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wanted to, you know what I mean?
No, I love talking.
I'm guiding the, you know what I mean? I fully at any point could ask you about you, but I don't.
Oh, we don't gotta. But
there's enough podcasts where it's like, so your dad's Italian?
I know.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
Or I also feel because okay, I don't listen to podcasts. I don't listen to podcasts really, but I feel like the ones I've been on.
I stopped it. Yeah.
The ones I've been on, I really just kind of tell the same essential stories of upbringing, and then we move along, or the same interests.
I'm interested in opinions.
I am too.
am not. I mean, I like hearing people's interests, especially if they're like unique and they have some cool opinions and insights in that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for you, theater is the insights that I'm mining.
And what's interesting also,
selfishly
what
mining.
I want to clarify here, what I really, really want to hone here is I also think theater people should not do comedy. I really think they should, like, I always say, like, because when I meet a lot of other comics, like, if I'm meeting them on a show, and we've never met before, and they meet me backstage, I fully respect that they probably are going to think I'm about to be shit at what I'm going to do. I would not think I'd be good at this either. I would think, Jesus, is another theater person who thinks that they can do this.
Right.
It is a different form, but I kind of think, it's easier for me to analyze it from a different lens and to analyze it from the comedic lens, because then I would get too intimidated. Because that learning process would be too scary for me, I think. Like, because I don't watch an insane amount of comedy. I watch the comics I'm obsessed with, and I always have. Like, growing up, I loved Joan Rivers. I loved Susie Essman.
Yeah, but I feel like you've seen comedies.
Yes.
Like, I feel like you've watched plenty of, like, comedic media or plays that aren't like, you know what
exactly,
I mean? Which counts.
I haven't seen a Louis C.K. special, so when he got canceled, I was so relieved, because it meant I was never going to have to watch any of it, because it's a lot. But, it's easier for me to pull in the outside information and apply it to this than try to work from within. I think that gets too intimidating sometimes. I think that's why I stopped writing plays for a little while, because I was so bogged down in my knowledge of the canon that it was hard to then do anything that I just wanted to do.
That's why I don't make porn.
Exactly.
No, sorry, I was trying to think of the funniest thing that jumps here. I was like, the first thought was like, that's why I don't write Dragon Ball Z or whatever. I don't know, but
I don't watch pornography anymore. I just watch certain scenes on HBO Max that are good enough.
You you pull it. Really, you know the.
I know
you
where
write
it
down
is.
The minute and everything.
Yes.
That's so funny.
There's a TV show called Looking. It was very good. It was actually not very good, but a lot of explicit scenes. Ooh. It was entertaining.
I was thinking about the idea of how funny you expect somebody to be based on their vibe or their thing. And I think like some of my favorite comedians know to fit a low status like type of role or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, especially like being in Philadelphia, there's a region called Delco, which is like got this like thick accent and like. And a lot of the best comedians in Philly were really like, "Yo, what the fuck is up, dude?" You know what I mean?
Totally.
And well,
and
presenting as that, but that you wouldn't expect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think also, this is like, I'm very resistant to the word character. I don't like character. I don't like persona. I think those are really tricky terms because again, that goes back to the idea of curation of everything. But wait, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I think we forget that just certain people are a certain way on stage when they're performing. Because performing, who you are changes when you're performing. I don't think there's too much of a need to analyze that sometimes. Like, I think, there are people where they're like, I'm going to be deadpan when I get on stage. But if that's not what you naturally do when you walk up there, then it doesn't work the same way. Versus there are other people that I meet where backstage they're exactly who they're about to be when they go on. And other people where they naturally transform.
Do you think you're who you are?
I think I am.
Yeah.
And I think it honestly really surprises people. Like I was on a show recently where at the end one of the other comics went, "Oh, that's really your voice." Like, yeah. Which is fun. I'm honored people think that I would use it that I would make it up and then use it well.
I don't know. I mean, because I mean, as being myself as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I would say you do. Yeah,
it's hard to, you know what I mean. I appreciate that.
But there are people where you see them make those little adjustments. Again, it's the idea of the audience, the idea of the comedy, and not the viscera.
I've seen some people who were doing that to medium effect, but then they've stopped and they're doing now they're being themselves more, and it's like working really well.
Oh, it's so much more fun. And I mean, trying to think of the right examples here of. I think when viscera gets evoked really well from both the performer and the audience at the same time, the effect is so exciting. When we all have the same reaction to it in the same moment, it is so... And it requires viscera and certain things that we all are going to have a connotation on, and it pulls itself out. And in doing that, you loosen up the idea of trying to perform a certain way, because it is just... You throw that out because you are having a real reaction to it.
And that includes things like disgust.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. I think, and then furthermore to that, I think as performers, we need to be aware that there are things about the joke that we don't know yet. There are elements of it that can invoke a feeling that we don't know is there just yet.
Oh, it's like when you get a laugh at part of a joke and you're like, wait, what?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, there's a great story about Maggie Smith, if you're familiar with who she is. She was McGonagall in Harry Potter, the professor. She's just a great stage actress, though, who's, I think, one of the best one-liner delivery people of all time. Like,
really?
Because she started doing the... comedic work, and she can just drop a one-liner like a motherfucker. And kind of her approach to how you do that over and over again. She was in some interview in like the 80s because she had been playing Desdemona and Othello for like over 1,000 performances or something. And someone was like, well, how do you keep that fresh? And she was like, well, I don't know everything about the play yet. Or go, but you've done it 1,000 times. She, yeah, I don't know everything about it yet. And we need to be as optimistic about our own writing and know that there are things in it that we don't know are there yet. Latent details that can provoke something visceral within us that's going to make the joke more exciting and roll for a longer time.
Yeah, because it definitely gets sick of older jokes, and it's like, that's a great way to think of it.
Yeah, and if it doesn't pull anything out in you, then how are you supposed to do it that many times not on autopilot? I mean, I hate watching someone on autopilot. I like when someone's saying something that they are having a reaction to as it's going.
Yeah, you can tell they feel some way about it.
Exactly, yeah. And then we're buying into it. We're sharing with it, and that makes it so much more fun. And
that's so cool.
But then also, the Maggie Smith detail that I love here. I think you'll appreciate this. This is the fun one.
Doubt it.
So I think you're going to like it. She was in a play called Private Lives, which is a great classic Noel Coward play. And she had, which is all one-liners. It's really funny. It's about a divorced couple who are on their honeymoon with their new spouses, and they're accidentally at the same hotel, and then they reconnect. And she had some line in it that was just that, where she has like a bite of something and goes, oh, that's disgusting. And it would get this huge, huge laugh. And then she was asked in an interview by a newspaper reporter, well, why is that funny? And she explained to her why that was a funny line and how she played it to make it funny. And she never could do it ever again. So she kind of has this theory that I really appreciate of, if you know your intention of the line and why you're doing it and the approach to it, you don't need to approach the mechanics. If you approach the mechanics, you're getting a little too close to why it's good. Because if you try to pull out the mechanics, then you're almost manipulating the audience. You're not holding the intention. You're not holding the purpose behind it.
That's interesting. I love the mechanics.
Yeah, but you do you as a performer though hide them very well.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Well, because what you're presenting us are always your interests, I would say.
Yeah.
And those interests and the fact that you enjoy them, that detail behind it is what makes it interesting for us. You're not saying set up punch.
Oh, I know what you mean. You could see people go like, you can see a joke, or you see the setup, and then you can write the punchline for them.
Exactly.
You're like, I know all the balls you've set up, and I know how they roll.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas, what makes it interesting and where the audience can't fill it in is that there is an organic detail behind it. The fact that this is a genuine interest of yours or a true story of mine.
Right.
That detail makes it enough that we don't need to address the mechanics.
Right.
In the moment.
Because it's the crowd can't go, oh, he's going to do a simple switch to this thing because it's like no. It's because I'm like dynamite.
Which is why I really don't like a lot of meta work. Because I think meta work, unless it's done obviously expertly well, which many times it is. But a lot sometimes you'll see people be like, "How's this for transition?" And it's like, no, don't tell me about. Don't try to make me laugh at the mechanic. That's distracting. Or something I really don't love is whenever someone doesn't try to let, like, every now and then you tell a story the audience isn't going to want to laugh at right away. You don't need to comfort them. You don't need to tell them, I know you're not going to like this yet. You don't need to offer that detail to them. That's giving away the mechanics of what you're doing. You can just do it, and eventually they'll get on board where they have to. I think, at least. Like, I have a joke about, or a story joke about, I had a stalker in college who, he didn't try to kill me. He only threatened. Only threatened. But, it took me time to, how do I introduce this idea of that there was a stalker, but not go to the audience, I know it's scary, or not go, I need you to get over it. How do I just tell the story?
You just tell it until, like, once they're on board, they're on board.
Exactly. And I think what I kind of found with that joke was midway through, they were on. And then after a while, my confidence in knowing they're going to get on midway through would show up in the first part, and they would get on earlier and earlier and earlier, until now that joke just kind of ticks like a clock.
Oh, yeah. And now you're on autopilot.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm just doing it. No, I'm just saying the words. No, but I'm very happy with that. Was a joke that a lot of my friends told me to abandon, and then they had to eat their words. They didn't eat their words. But a lot of people told me that it was just too scary of a joke, and then I found a way to make it work.
I mean, I've been doing material about eating bugs, for example, and it's like, that's definitely something that I was genuinely, like, I thought people would hate it. Like, I thought people would really, really hate that bit. And I think some people do.
Yeah.
To be fair.
I find it good.
I appreciate that.
I like it.
It's not, I mean, there's still, basically, the thing is, like, the jokes inside of it are replaceable. It's not like a cohesive, like, story. It's like, I'm just, like, talking, there's different jokes and I can swap them out for better ones at any time. You know what I mean?
But where I would say there actually is a story to it is you really introduce it to us. Mm-hmm. Like, and this is an example of, the mechanics going well, because you're not using them to the jokes end, you're using them to your own personal end of letting us know this is something, because I've seen you do it where you kind of say, now I'm going to talk about eating bugs. And you really introduce it to us with that state, and you let us have our own reaction. Oh. And then you move us through it with these details. That is, in its own way, storytelling and letting the audience have an independent relationship with you that then we need to move through with you.
I didn't even think about it. That's
cool. It happens naturally versus, someone who tries to present it as a certain way.
I was sort of, I don't know about forced as much, but I was trying to just tell those jokes. Like, I like kind of just going like, hey, I've been eating bugs, and then like going into it, and people thought it was fully like not real. And it's like,
isn't that interesting when that happens?
Yeah.
Or what do you think whenever you learn someone has an elaborate story that isn't true?
I don't know the last time I learned somebody had an elaborate story that isn't true.
I feel like I know a lot of people who do. Not a lot of people, but
sometimes you can tell.
You can tell. And I feel always kind of like, well, I always think the idea of inventing something so completely is just very intimidating to me. I think I would get exhausted. I just think it's easier to work with things that are true, because then your scope is more limited and you can write faster because you can't change what happened.
Well, so I make up things as devices to have a character be high status that isn't me.
Interesting.
So like your work has characters in it. Mine doesn't, unless I specifically need a comparison with something.
Yeah.
So they have that joke about I was on a date and the girl said, "Do you know that Emily Dickinson only became famous after she died?" That didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's not a true thing.
Wait, what's the end of that joke again?
And I said, "Oh, word, that's the same for dinosaurs." And like the way that joke came about is I was trying to write jokes about dinosaurs, and I was like, they died, and then they're like, now they're in the movies. I'm like, oh, that's funny that they died, and now they're in the movies.
Well, if I may also kick this to an earlier point, that's such a good example of working with the noun and then going backwards.
Yeah,
having a setup that tends to the actual idea.
Totally.
I conflate people a lot. Like in stories that involved a lot of people, I'll combine them into one person sometimes. That's one of the biggest edits I do. Or I'll crunch timelines, or I'll because it's just
do
easier.
Fast travel.
Kind of, because it's easier to say something happened, in one period as opposed to this was multiple stages of a time. You can make it a little faster that way.
Totally.
Because it is an adaptation process, I think.
There's like elements that you're like, well, this part has to be true, though.
Yes.
You can't change this part. Yeah.
And I think that the audience can smell it when it's not true, and it's less exciting for us.
Yeah. Yeah, excitement with the crowd. Some people talk about the most important thing is to have like the audience's attention. I feel like you and I are fine with that. I feel
Yeah.
like people are paying attention. I don't know.
I put it this
don't
way.
know.
I've
You know what I
never worried the audience isn't listening. I think though that's just also how I am. And it's the kind of thing of, I think also before I did stand up, again, because I don't change much between on stage and off stage, it's just my ideal form of communicating with people, which is that they can't talk. I can say what I want. Like, I feel like I'm a better conversationalist post doing stand up nightly because I don't need to shoehorn things in that I want to talk about.
Because you have an outlet for it.
Exactly.
You have a therapist.
Or sometimes, at mics, I'll just do jokes I know I'm not going to keep, but they're on my mind, and I just want to do them because they're what's racking around my brain right now, and they're the thing I would be annoying my friends with at that moment, and it's just easier to put them somewhere else.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna explain the drama, but I had some text of like drama, and like I really rarely talk about stuff on stage, but I did a whole set one time where like I was having like kind of like really intense drama on my phone, and I just like worked through it.
Yeah.
On the stage, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, for me, it's also like I go through because this is something very.
By the way, it wasn't a personal thing. If anybody's trying to figure it out, it wasn't like directly about me. It was
I like
drama,
how you looked into the camera on
happening.
that. Oh, I'm kind of falling out of. I want them to be able to
shit.
see me here. I'm looking good today, folks.
Especially they can hear you.
I think that we're good on that front. But what was I about to? So I go through really random obsession because I go to the library a lot and I read a lot there, and I wind up getting very obsessed with things I'm reading about. And I will just kind of not write great jokes about things just to talk about them because I just want to do it. Like I got really obsessed with Margaret Thatcher for a little while. Not that she's good.
Yeah.
I just found reading about her so fascinating. I was like, I have to write kind of half-assed jokes on Margaret Thatcher to talk about what I'm learning.
I think you and I might have a similar thing where we get obsessed with a thing.
Yes.
And then we're like, you're like, I have to talk about Margaret Thatcher. I'm like, I have to talk about my yellow watering can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's like, like the need to put it out there is so, yellow is my signature color.
This is like the podcast logo. It is actually.
That's you have a logo that's very impressive.
You have to have like a artwork thing or like, you know what I mean?
You see, I'm literally never on the internet. Well, I Google in my last hour of work every day, I say I can Google whatever I want. And that's my exciting little reward. I'm never on the internet, really.
Really?
Well, I made an Instagram for comedy.
Right.
And I don't post much on it. I never post reels or anything like that. I don't really watch anything on it, unless it's what immediately comes up on my phone. I don't seek things out too much.
You like the first thing you put out like on social media or like on the internet is going to be like a full 1 act, like 1 hour.
Well, I feel also kind of like the things I write are meant to be done live. And I that's how I understand them. That's how I understand performing them. Whereas whenever I watch a tape of myself, I'm like, I think this is great, but I look crazy because I'm talking to an audience. I'm not addressing the camera at all.
Right.
And it's not really meant to be done that way. Nothing I do is bite-sized.
The thing with like crowd work is like crowd work in the room, so exciting.
Like
electric, you know what I mean? But crowd work on the phone is like, well, I know if you did like 20 shows and you had one crowd work thing go well, you just caught that one.
Exactly.
And sort of like it loses the excitement of the moment and of like it becomes kind of a numbers game.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Crowd work is this really exciting moment also where the room now really knows that we can see them.
Right.
Like, this is a really weird thing that was in my mind recently.
I'm gonna start crowd working the comments.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, this is really interesting. So I was with I went to the opera this week with Claire Olshansky, and
Shout out, Clara.
One of my favorite things about the opera is acoustically with how it's built. Because how an opera house needs to be built for because they don't have any amplification. It's the natural traveling of sound.
Really?
The singers can apparently hear us as well as we hear them.
Really?
So if you ever whisper or drop sing or what have you, they actually can hear you as easily as we're hearing them in that moment.
Huh.
But what's weird is they never have a moment where they address that. So we think we have this anonymity that we actually don't have. Whereas in comedy, the process with crowd work is we're letting them know we see you. You actually need to be engaged because we see you and we can work it out with you. That's why for the show I host, I always just make sure I open it up with crowd work and just throw out whatever plan I have. Because if the room knows we can see them and we are engaging with them, then they're going to be so much more involved. You're going to have so much more with the room. And that relationship, that rapport, adds such a texture to it that, again, is only for that moment. So, fuck the tape.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
Because the tape itself, that's meant to be consumed so separately is really darkly modernist to me. It's so behind the glass and analyzing the reflection. It's not that moment where that room was aware that we could see them and they could see us, so we're sharing this one specific thing right now.
It feels transactional. It feels like, hey, if you guys laugh, I'll be able to post this.
And that's not the point, I don't think.
Exactly.
I believe in the ephemera of the American stage. But also, I think I also, though, am very tricky about...
That's the name of the episode.
Yeah, the ephemera of the American stage.
Yeah.
But there is one time in college, because I went to a college that had a lot of comedy stuff, and a cool guy in the comedy scene told me that the most anyone would ever want from me are front-facing Twitter videos. So I was like, then I'm never going to make a Twitter.
Oh, it's funny to hear you say that, because then I'm like, you mentioned you were 24.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I can pinpoint when you were in college.
No, I'm 25 now.
You're 25? Yeah. Shout out, happy birthday.
Thank you. But, yeah, it was when I was in college, those were the big things at the time period. And I just didn't really have interest.
Shit, fuck.
And I think when I was in college was also really weird, was,
I never made them one either. I actually have a note over here. I'll let you continue, and then I'll...
No, what's the note?
Man of the Mud. And the premise is I'm going to rub a bunch of dirt all over myself and do like a front-facing video as if I'm like a guy who like lives in the mud. Be like... It's like every you know what I mean. But you kind of do like a relatable,
I think though that you consume those videos, so you like them, you organically like them, and you know how to put yourself into them.
You don't watch them?
I don't watch them, so I don't really know anything about them. I'm sure if I watch them, I'd think that they're great, but I don't.
But you were telling this story about the college. I don't want to derail.
Oh yeah, but I think that from there, I just decided that I wasn't going to consume those things to make sure I never could.
Oh.
Because I knew that...
perfect on-ramp. That's like the same thought.
Well, I also, I feel like it's very easy. If I'm ever concerned about something being too similar to something else or not wanting to ever do something, I just won't consume it. So that way I never fall under that mistake. Like, I work on, have you ever, you've seen Carter Innings and Lexi Ritter's show, The Power of Jeff. So I direct that.
Oh, really? Okay.
And one of the first things they told me was that they were worried it was going to be too similar to Oh Hello. So I was like, great, I won't ever watch it. Because that way I never have that concern. I don't have to be worrying about being too similar or too different. I can just kind of have my eye on what this specific thing is at this moment. It's a little better microphone wise.
Oh yeah. Also, we're at an hour.
Are we really?
Yeah. Well, we'll do the second half soon.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking about the idea of like writing a script and you like have like beats and then you go you have people separately write it out and then you come join. It's like I don't know. I've never done that, but it's some famous writer technique.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, folks, Michael Abber, do you have any plugs?
Do I have any plugs?
Yeah.
Wait, I have a question. Am I done with the episode? Am I not doing anything else on this episode?
We'll do a second half.
Love. Very glad to do the second half.
So this is the first hour is live.
Gotcha.
YouTube. Second half is Patreon.
I like it.
Only $4 a month. Buy me a third of a sandwich.
What is Patreon?
Like in general, as a concept? You don't listen to podcasts, it seems.
No.
It's that thing where you can pay creators and you get like bonus content essentially.
What?
It's like a way to it's a way for me to like directly get an income from the podcast.
That's kind of whoring out your art.
Yes.
In a way. I have plugs. I host a show that's bi-weekly at Pine Box Rock Shop with Jonathan Van Halen called Hot Gossip, a very fun show.
Yeah.
I have a monthly I do at Club Cumming called Neighborhood Darlings, another very fun show. Those are my 2 plugs.
Hell yeah. Folks, and then I
can look in the camera now.
May 28th, I'll be at Punchline in Philly. That'll be fun.
Oh, wait. No, I have a different plug also.
Yeah, you got a show?
June 1st, I'm headlining A League of Her Own in Washington, D.C.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, hell yeah. If you're in Washington, D.C., check out Michael
It'll
Abber.
be good.
And I'll put your social in the thing in between.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
And they can see the absolutely nothing that you post. All right, we're going to go to part 2. See you, folks.
Alrighty. You sign off. Yeah.
Bye.